Okay, so here we are at the Olympus booth, and this Photokina Olympus announced the development of this beautiful camera, which is our flagship. And as everybody expected, it's a successor of the original EM1, which has been announced 3 years ago. So now is the right time actually for us to come with the successor, which is called EM1 Mark II. And basically this camera is all about speed. So basically every single thing that you can imagine that can be improved as for the speed on the camera has definitely been improved. What does it mean in reality? We've got a totally new image sensor. The image sensor has got 20 megapixels. That's roughly or basically the same as in Pen F, but it's not, that I have to say, it's not the same sensor as in Pen F. Why? Because this sensor actually is using 121 new contrast focusing points, but all the 121 focusing points are actually also the phase detection points. So we are actually combining the contrast with the phase detection points. And what's even more important, that the phase detection points, all of them are cross points. So this camera has been improved in the speed of focusing extremely. I would say it's roughly, in single autofocus, it's roughly 6 times faster than anything we would have ever had before. And if you have ever tried OMD cameras, they have been very fast in single autofocusing already. So this camera is really blazing speed. But from my point of view, what is even more important is the improvement in the continuous autofocusing system. So finally, I dare to say that this is the camera for even a sports photographer. So basically, if you are shooting fast movement for object, if it's wildlife, if it's sports photography, this is definitely the camera done for this kind of genre. So it's about speed of the focusing system, but it's not the only one actually, because we have also improved the readout, or the speed of the readout from the sensor, and therefore we have extremely improved the sequential shooting. If you use mechanical shutter, the camera is capable of doing 10 or 15 frames per second, which is with mechanical shutter, and it depends whether you are using continuous focusing, which would be 10 frames, or single focusing, which would be 15. I'll show you one thing actually, because I think this is something that you need to see and that you need to hear. I will now turn on the I will turn on the sequence shooting, which will give you those very nice and fast 15 frames per second. So this is basically it. And it's a nice sound, you know. So this is with the mechanical shutter. What I will do now is I will turn off the mechanical shutter and I will switch to electronic shutter. And the electronic shutter has the advantage that you don't hear a single sound. So you don't hear nothing. But actually at this very moment when I press the trigger, I'm shooting 60 frames per second. If you have heard properly, it wasn't 16, it was 60. So 60 frames per second I'm shooting right now, and it's all in raw data. So those 10 and 15, and even this 60 frames per second is shot not in JPEG. It can be shot in JPEG, of course, but it can also be shot in raw data. So also the buffer memory is much larger than it was before. And you can imagine that to process this data, you need a very, very fast processor. And it's also a big improvement, because now we are using a TruePic 8 processor, which is actually using double quad core, so basically it's 8 cores to process all this data, and of course it also works for the fast focusing system. Then, again, I'm getting back to the speed, because there is still one very, very special feature which we've got on this camera, and that is what we call Pro Capture. Pro Capture actually means that as soon as you just half press the trigger, you are not fully pressing, you are just half pressing the trigger, and now I am holding the trigger half pressed, I'm already shooting images and buffering the memory with 14 images. So all this time I'm shooting right now, and as soon as I really fully press the trigger, those 14 images are actually being taken to the memory card, because there is an SD memory card, and it continues with another 25 images. So basically, it's totally impossible that you miss an image. Imagine you are a reportage photographer, you are grabbing the camera from your back or from your behind, you know, you just half press the trigger, and in the moment of full pressing, you already have 14 images shot. And again, it's not in JPEG, it can also be in raw data. So basically, this camera is really extreme camera. As for the speed, 60 frames per second. As for shooting moments that you would normally miss, because really half pressing you are already shooting the images, and it's not taken from 4K. You know, there's competitive cameras who actually half pressing the camera, shoot 4K video, and then as soon as you press it you can take the image from the 4K. No, because this is low resolution, we are really speaking about full frame resolution, about full resolution, which is 20 megapixels in raw data. And then, of course, if you look at the design, I mean, the design from the front side looks just about the same as the previous EM1, which from my point of view is absolutely great because the ergonomy of EM1 was very good already. What has changed a little bit is we have improved or enlarged the grip by maybe 2 to 3 millimeters, so it's slightly bigger, so it holds much better now. The ergonomy is more comfortable. But otherwise, from the front and even from the top, I mean, the design and the position of the dials is just about the same. What has changed, though, is the back part of the camera, because previously we could not turn and swivel the LCD like we can do now. So basically, if you are not a fan of looking through the LCD, you can just look through the viewfinder and you just turn off or turn back the LCD. Speaking about the viewfinder has the same resolution as previously, so it's 2.36 megapixels, but it's not LCD anymore, it's OLED. And what's great about it, it's faster again, it's much faster. The refreshing rate is actually 120 frames per second. And the time lag, which previously has been 16 milliseconds, went down to only 6 milliseconds. So basically you don't realize the difference between optical viewfinder and the electronic viewfinder now. So this has been improved in speed as well. And if you look at the buttons, they are, again, as I said, roughly on the same position. From the mechanical or ergonomical point of view, what has changed also is the double slot. We are not using one slot anymore, so we've got two SD cards here. One is UHS-1 type, and the other one is actually UHS-2. So it's really, as I said, 60 frames per second in raw data. It's a big amount of data. So you need to process it fast. That's why there is the TruePic 8 processor. But you also need to read it, write it very fast into the card. So that's why there is the UHS-2 memory slot. On the other side, you remember that previously we used to have one big cover, rubber cover for all connectors. Now it's divided into 3 connectors. There is one for earphones, one for the microphone, and the last one actually covers HDMI connector and also the USB, and finally it's USB 3, which we don't only need for transferring data to the computer, but also for actually tethered shooting, because this camera, as the previous one, can do the tethered shooting. It's roughly just the very most important facts about this camera. So basically, as I said, it's all about speed. This is really the camera which I would very easily be able to say to a sports photographer, okay, if you want to use this camera, definitely go for it, because this is probably one of the fastest camera in the world right now at the moment, even compared to very high-end DSLRs. Then let's look at the lenses, because we have not only introduced this beautiful flagship, but we have also introduced 3 more lenses. Actually, 2 of them I will show you right now. This is our brightest lens we have ever announced within the digital era of photography. This is our 25, which is equivalent of 50 millimeters, so basically it's a standard lens, with the aperture of 1.2. So it's a really, really bright lens, and there is actually 9 focal blades, so basically you get very, very rounded bokeh. The pictures, if you are shooting 1.2, are really beautiful with very nice rounded bokeh. So that's 25, and of course, since this lens belongs to our Pro series, it's all weatherproof, sealed-proof, you know, it's freeze-proof against, proven against the dust, as the camera. So it's not just the camera which is weatherproof, it's also the Pro lenses. And as most of the Pro lenses, we also use this manual focus clutch. So if you really want to quickly switch to manual focusing, you just push this circle down and back again to autofocusing system. And now, the second lens from the Pro range we have just introduced is this beautiful 12 to 100, which is actually very small if you consider the fact that this lens covers the equivalent of 24 to 200 millimeters, which basically normally, if you are a reportage photographer using DSLR lenses, usually you cover this focal length with 2 lenses. You've got 24 to 70 and then 70 to 200 in the aperture of 4, for example. While here you've got only one lens, one single lens, again proven against, you know, dust, water, freeze-proof. But this one is specialized in one more fact, and that is it uses optical stabilization. Those of you who follow Olympus, you already know that Olympus has announced several months ago a 300 millimeter lens, which is equivalent of 600 millimeter lens, which uses optical stabilization. And in the combination of this optical stabilization and the mechanical stabilization, which is here on the sensor, which gives you 5-axis stabilization, you are actually getting 6 EV with the 300 millimeter. With this one, you are getting 6.5 EV compensation. So basically, you don't need to worry to shoot on the 200mm equivalent with the aperture of f4, even in dark conditions with no flash, because you are very easily able or capable of holding 1/10 of a second or even longer times with this kind of combination. So definitely, this is our, let's say, or will be hopefully our best seller for the reportage lenses, because this one really covers most focal lengths that you need for reportage photography. Then we have also introduced a very small 30mm macro lens, which we will look at later on at the booth. It's one of the smallest macro lenses, which actually gives you the enlargement equivalent to 2.5 times. So it really gives you very detailed image of whatever you are shooting, whether it's insect, whether it's small flowers, etc. And then speaking back or coming back to the Pro range, we have also introduced the professional flash, which is called FL900. All of you probably know and remember FL600, which gives you roughly similar features. Of course, the head is bounce and swivel, so you can turn it all the way around. You've got an LED down here, so that if you are shooting video, actually you can shoot it as a video light. You can use it as a video light. And what's new about this flash is that, first of all, it cooperates with a special mode, which is in the camera, which is called autofocus bracketing. You all probably know what autofocus bracketing means. It means that you press the trigger and it actually gives you maybe 8 shots, one after the other, and it refocuses slowly from one to the other. But if you are shooting with flash, it was usually very difficult to actually flash or light all the images and then combine them together, not having the result overexposed. This flash actually calculates with the fact that there will be more images which will be combined later on in the camera to one single image, and therefore it's designed for this autofocus bracketing. And what's more, this is first Olympus flash within the digital era, which actually offers you a strobo effect. So within one longer exposure, actually, you can get several flashes in the same time. And from the back, of course, you've got this very nice LCD. It handles very easily, so the ergonomics of this one is very good as well. Speaking about flashes, there is one more flash we have announced at Photokina, or we have announced the development of it, and that is a macro flash, which is a twin macro flash, and it's actually the very first macro flash which is sealed against water, dust, and it's freeze-proof again, as the whole system of Olympus is. Okay, so as you can see at Photokina, we have not only announced the Pro stuff for professional photographers, but we've also announced beautiful family and not just ladies, but also male tiny cameras. This is a new pen, actually, a successor of EPL7. We call it EPL8, and from the very first look, if you look at it, the camera is actually getting even much more beautiful, and it's from some bloggers, actually, they say they commend this camera to be a fashion accessory, which I would truly admit, because I mean this camera is really a masterpiece, and in this beautiful white silver color and the brown color which we've got here as well, I mean this is definitely something that I can imagine buying to my wife, you know, even to my daughter, and the camera just look beautiful. So if you are women and you go, for example, to a concert, you go to a theater, and you want to shoot some images, you would not probably want to carry around, you know, this plastic, black, big cameras, which I don't want to specify, but you all know what I'm talking about. You would rather take something like this. And even as you have probably noticed, Olympus is actually very good at accessories, at fashion accessories. So we have introduced many types of lady bags, you know, and something that looks like a standard bag where you normally put lipsticks, but actually inside is all cushioned for the camera. So this is the EPL8. As for the functions, basically, it is derived from the OMD EM10. So inside there is a big micro four thirds sensor. Of course, it has got detachable lenses. There is an image stabilization built in, so basically the sensor is being stabilized as well. And of course you get all those functions like you would normally find on professional DSLR. So you've got the manual modes, you've got the aperture priority, shutter priority, all those modes that you would not even expect from such a camera. Of course, if you do not want to hassle around, you just turn it to Eye Auto, which is fully automatic mode, and you just shoot images. But what is great about this camera is actually the selfie modes, because as I said, it's very much being loved by bloggers and by young ladies, young girls, and this is something that they would definitely love. We have actually come with the EPL8, we are actually coming with some new selfie features. So as soon as you turn the LCD this way, actually facing towards you, all of a sudden on the screen you would see a shutter release button, you would see a video recording button and all the others. So you can actually control the camera directly from here, from the LCD. And it actually even gives you this very special delay time, so that actually if you press this button, it gives you 1 second delay so that you can actually move the hand off, position yourself into a certain position you want to be in, and then it takes the image. So this camera definitely is designed for people who are in love with photography, who do not want to shoot on mobile phones, who do want to have high-res images because they definitely want to take use of the big sensor which is inside, who want to change lenses, who want to buy maybe a portrait lens with very nice aperture, which is like 1.8, etc. So very bright lenses for shooting in dark conditions. And they also really want to show that they do have a nice masterpiece. It's like buying expensive watches, while this is not an expensive camera. This is a normal priced camera, but it is very beautiful. And of course, if you are male, you would be considering the colors. You would maybe not go for the white one, you would maybe not go for the brown one, but we've got a third version, and this is the black-silver universal variation, which I think is for everybody.